My husband's up here with a saw. What are you doing?
Open heart surgery.
Open heart surgery. I see cuts.
So this is all saturated. All the wood coring.
Welcome back to Underway Drifting and Dreaming. I'm Jennifer, and my husband Jim has been busy repairing a compromised area of the deck underneath the pulpit. Damage was caused by moisture penetrating the deck, causing the wood to rot. Jim has identified the extent of the damage. He will walk you through the steps he has taken to repair the affected sections and ensure proper core replacement. This is the first of a two-part series. All right, so Jim is out of the anchor locker. We got the bolts off and the washers. And this is what the pulpit looks like underneath. And look at that mud from the World Travels.
So all the water and mud's going in there. This should have a bead, a caulk, all the way around to keep the water out of there, and it doesn't. So that's what we're gonna improve with this. We'll put a real thick bead on here, around each one, and that should solve it. That's just, you can see water's just flowing through here.
So these holes right here was
Those
the drain
are the
holes.
through holes, yeah. And then there's the two chalks for the key.
Oh, the chalk was there, and then the bolts that we just took off.
So no sealant at all. So we'll get that fixed. Hopefully we'll get everything dried out. Get this. There's a couple spots of corrosion that I want to get painted, so form underneath the windlass. So I'm going to cut this square out. It'll peel right off from the wood because it's saturated. I drilled a couple holes here. Take out all the wood. We're going to put coosa board in there. We'll epoxy it all in there. Then I'll put that lid right back on there.
Was that strong enough to cut that?
Oh yeah.
Here Jim is pulling off the laminate at the top. I'm not sure if that's what you call it. You can see that it's totally saturated. It's dripping. But you can see the water dripping there on the deck. You can always remember to use some type of water barrier. Wow, that's a bag of rotted wet wood there.
Good mulch.
Is there odor to it at all, or?
Yeah, I'm sure. So this is the inside fiberglass.
So you reach the...
Yeah, so that's the inside.
So the fiberglass is fine.
Yes, if you can see, this is the hole that bolt goes through. So it's like an 1/8 inch skin of fiberglass on the inside. So this very bottom layer of fiberglass or wood in the forepeak is actually pretty good. So that hopefully will be fine. I'm gonna take out any of the wet wood up under here. I'm not gonna cut any further up because the water entered from here and went back. So it seems to be pretty solid up in here. under here is definitely wet. So I may have to open this up just a small square. Here's the bolts for the anchor windlass. So if I can stay on the inside of this, open that up, because those wires here are where the anchor windlass power cables go in. They were wet. So I mean, there's definitely wood all in here. I don't want to have to open all this up. So if the water came in through here, it saturated the bottom underneath that. So we'll see. I'm gonna, like I say, I can take these out, just let it air dry and test. This wood here, where the chain goes through, it's solid all the way through. So it's good. It was a little damp, but it looks like they put epoxy all the way around it, which is good. So I'm hoping just where those wires are is where it's wet, and then I can reach up under here and fill this all with epoxy, thicken epoxy. Put the plywood in, or coosa board, one layer, thicken epoxy, set it in there, another layer on top. This will all be cleaned out, thicken epoxy on top of that, squish it down, just in there to be the sink level. So a little messy, but it's not that complicated of a job. So it'll be nice to dry it out. I mean, it's got a hot day and windy right now, so it's gonna really dry out all these edges. I can really see if there's any more rotted wood in there.
Gross. It just, something waiting to fail, huh?
Yeah. So the hardwood above this plywood for the windlass is good, but it's this piece of plywood that only runs in this section.
Okay.
And then it goes forward. So there's no coring above it on the deck, which is good. So I went ahead and I'm glad I did this, because this is a mess.
So you can push that out?
Yeah, this is fiberglass here. This is the top deck. So the piece of coosa will slide all the way into here. And then I'll epoxy this, and we'll put that up into there and seal it, and then I'll fiberglass the frame. But all this whole piece of plywood would be new, which what it needed to be, because it was just saturated, and it will never dry out like that.
Yeah.
And it's just, so it's a big job, but we're doing it right.
Well, the inside of the anchor locker looks great, all nice and clean, and once that's done, ready to paint.
Yeah, then we should have. Big day. We are going to start applying our coosa board. Coosa board is a replacement for plywood. It's basically a carbon with fiberglass, and it's used as a coring material. So if water ever gets into it, it doesn't absorb water. So underneath here, this is where the anchor windlass is. This is a solid, at least 3.5 inch thick wood by a foot by about 18 inches, maybe 2 feet. This had no water damage. The plywood underneath it was saturated because water was coming in, saturating this, and also down where the chain comes through. I've sealed that with epoxy. Top and bottom is all solid, so that was a great thing. So in this position, we already have our cut coosa board, and we're going to slide those in. It's going to be 3 pieces. There'll be the 2 outer side pieces and then the center piece. And I've already got it how I'm going to be able to slide it in and apply it. So first we're going to start with Thixo. It's a 2-part epoxy. It's a kind of a neat thing. Use a caulk gun. It mixes in the nozzle, part A and B, and comes out. I'm going to finish filling in this crack all the way around, and then the coosa board will squeeze up into it. I'm not going to use a thickened epoxy to apply the coosa board to this wood. I'm going to use all 3M 5200s. Not many places you want to use 5200 because it's made to be permanent. So like the hull and the deck joint here is probably 5200. Something you're never going to take apart because it's gonna adhere. It adheres to wood. It'll adhere to the coosa board. So We'll do the thickened epoxy all the way around to fill in the cracks and the voids, and then I'll spread 5200 on this. We're going to slide the coosa board into there. I've got them, like I say, cut out to size. We're going to squeeze it up in there, and to hold it in place temporary, we are going to use screws. I'm going to run screws up through it into the wood with fender washers. We'll do about 4 or 5, and that's going to really tighten it up there and hold it. We'll let it sit for a day, and then from there we're going to bring in another piece of coosa board. This is going to end up being almost 3/4 inches, 1 inch. I'm sorry, well, it'll be 1 inch of coosa board, and then it'll be 1/4 inch of fiberglass. Then we'll put the piece back in there, fiberglass it, tape it, and paint it, and look brand new. All right, so here goes my thickened epoxy. It's kind of a waste. They say the first 3-4 inches you shouldn't use because it's getting the mixtures together, A and B. So I don't like you wasting that, but that's what it calls for, is to get it all through there. So both sides, there's a top chamber and a bottom chamber in these tubes, and so it pushes it there. I guess there's little tubes in there. It's kind of interesting how it works.
So it's not a color change, it's going to be...
No, the other stuff we used had a color change. You had this West system, the same similar setup. You have sort of a yellowish, just like you have like this 5-minute epoxy glues, and as you can see in there, the bottom of the thing, it didn't go all the way through. It's like, hey, this still has a bunch in it. Well, it's like I say, it's 2 chambers. So there's a middle chamber, or a middle pipe that goes up and squirts the one part A, and then the other stuff part B. So it's kind of a neat design. But yeah, so you see the plunger only goes halfway. And this one, the plunger is here, but you can see a middle plunger in there, and so it just kind of squeezes both out. All right, so that's good here, and let's start going up into here. I've already used this to make sure it will fit. You have to have a good caulk gun that is strong enough to push this through, because this one is more of a heavier duty one. The one we have on our 5200 is a basic caulk gun you get at Home Depot, and it really didn't work well with the other primer. The stuff was too thick for it. So the thickened epoxy I thought about using, but it sags a lot. This stuff doesn't sag, so it's really good for this overhead application.
When will you need me to go upstairs?
About 5 minutes. I'm going to apply the rest of the 5200 on this wood and spread it around. There's 1 or 2 little areas here I wasn't able to get the gun all the way in there. I've been going through rubber gloves, but
so you're going to go around all the...
Yeah, so I've got it marked where the first piece of coosa board is. Definitely go around where the holes come through. The bigger holes I re-epoxy. They had the epoxy from the factory, so that's why there wasn't really any water damage with them. On that old boat, and I used a notch trowel.
So just like you're doing tiling, some ceramic tile.
This way we know there'll be 100% coverage.
No air bubbles.
No air bubbles, and a consistent spread, which is going to be important so we don't get too thick. because we don't have too much room to spare for 2 layers of coosa board in here. All right, I think we have.
Okay, I'm up here on the deck. There's the windlass and the cover, the pulpit cover. I'm up here on the deck. There's the windlass and the cover, the pulpit cover. And I am going to get down here. I'm gonna slide it back. Okay. So that's just the board going back. I'm just trying to keep it level. How much further do I need to go? All right. I'm just gonna cover that back up. And all right, I'm underneath here now.
Sliding it all the way over. I can see the edge. Okay. Now, the idea.
Oh, you're gonna screw something, right?
We've got screws and fender washers that we are going to use, and that's probably right where the hole is. So. All right, so you can see it squeezing out. That's exactly what we want.
You'll do like 4 of them, or?
Yeah.
All right, Jim's fast at work doing the port side. He's applying he applied the 5200, now he's just spreading it. Very tight spot to climb up there to film, but it's just the same as the first side. I'm just spreading out the 5200 so there'll be no air bubbles.
These will come off. It's sort of a temporary fix, but you can see it really tightens in the coosa board and brings it up tight.
I have another sunshine day. I'm up here with a coosa board, which is the material there. It's made out of fiberglass. And I get to do something with a hammer. Jim's gonna demonstrate. I'm gonna tap something with a hammer. We're doing a dry fit for this coosa board. So I'm gonna tap on this wood here, set it like that, and then tap it gently once Jim is ready. So here I go. Jim's out working again, getting ready to cut a little bit more on the bow. Getting the work done. It looks like somebody from Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory. Jim, what are you doing in the anchor locker again?
Another day in the locker. So, we've got 2 layers now of coosa board in here. I epoxied this in the other day, so we've got 1 inch of coosa board. So that now comes to the original level of the interior fiberglass. So it's solid. I've got thickened epoxy all the way around, and it's solid. I had screws in there to really pull it in tight. So and it joins with our dividing wall. So now we have this gap here that goes forward, and that's what the original plywood, a 1/2 inch piece of plywood, went from here all the way forward. So this is the upper deck, and then here's the inside skin. So what we're going to do now is I've got the one piece of coosa board from the outside. It's going to slide in here, and then it'll lock into this. So we'll fill this one void up with thickened epoxy on both sides. We'll wet this out. We'll drive that other piece of coosa board in to match up with this. And that should join, like I say, our interior 1 inch to the 1/2 inch that's going all the way forward. And then once this is all dry, we'll regrind this, and then I'll bring in probably 2 layers of fiberglass matting, or 17, I think it's 1708, it's a biaxial fiberglass. And we'll rejoin all this in, so it'll be sealed, prime it, paint it. Should be done, 2 days.
2 days. All right.
Kind of just priming the surface that this piece of coosa board is going to go on. So it's primed there. Go ahead and prime this piece.
Is that a 2-part epoxy or?
It's a 5-to-1 2-part epoxy. It's got a slow release hardener, so don't have to rush it. You can work it for quite a while. I got a little hard piece of plastic there. I'll set up there, and then I'm going to use the other thickened epoxy that's in here. Looks like Vaseline, and we'll put it inside there in that wet. And I'll probably do a run through it with the grinder again tomorrow. Alright, so here's the thickened stuff. And I'm going to put 1 layer here. The idea is that this piece of coosa board is going to push it, and then it'll also help to embed it in the top.
Okay, so you're kind of like buttering that top there.
Yeah. I'll still go underneath and put more of this on the inside. Alright, so here we are. New coosa board, and here's the gap we're filling. Jennifer's on the outside, and I've filled all this little gap that was on the edge there. It's about a 1/4, 3/8 inch gap with thickened epoxy on both sides, and then around the drain tubes. These are the original drain tubes that were covered with fiberglass. It's just a 1/2 inch copper, and it was just draining right into the bilge, onto the anchors and on the road and stuff. So we are going to, I've cleaned it off so I can put a hose on it, and then we'll shoot it over and put through hole fitting here, so everything drains overboard instead of in locker. All right, Jennifer, we're ready to start tapping it in. All right, so here it comes. Okay, slow down. All right, hold it there. Come to the right side a little more, starboard side. Okay, and you can see now the epoxy is getting pushed out, so I'm going to sit down the camera. That's a good sign that it's all flowing in there. And put down the camera and get that, catch it, and then we'll show you the end product. All right, it's starting to come in. I've got the excess thinned epoxy out of, or thickened epoxy. I keep saying thin epoxy. And you can see it's got to come in about a 1/2 inch. Okay, go ahead and start tapping it in. Are you up there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, start tapping it in. I think she feels. Hold on. Keep going on the starboard side. You get work on both sides, supports, and go to starboard. Okay, to center, and then you're almost there at the port. Yeah, the port's in, so it's just the last bit on the starboard. Okay, and here we go. I went up and helped Jennifer, and we got that hammered all the way in. Now it's a solid piece. The glue's all squirted out, which is good. I'll use this extra here to fill in the holes I drilled with the screws to hold this piece up. And then you can see in the shadow where that coosa board goes, all the way up in here. Now, what we'll do is 2 more pieces that go all the way to the bow. And this should all cure. And then last thing inside here will be to put a patch of fiberglass, about 2 or 3 layers there. All right, so nice tight fit. But I'm glad to be able to get that in there. And I'm just going to push in some of the thickened epoxy into the cracks all the way around, although it seems to be pretty tight, but that'll also help a little bit with glass. And of course I'll fill in the holes from the screws that we had. Big thing here is to have a nice flush surface for the glass to stick to.
How long does it take for this epoxy to cure?
We'll let it sit overnight, although it'll be a couple days before I'm ready to come in here and glass it. I have the holes I've got to re-drill. Right now I've got the holes above that I can see, and I'll drill down. So this will be a hole here for the windlass, a hole here for the windlass. And you can see I cut out the fiberglass here because that fiberglass was shaped, it had been pulled up because the wood was wet. It actually pulled up and deformed. So it was sort of an indentation there. So I've cleaned it out. Here is epoxy, thickened epoxy. I used a piece of tape when I pushed this one in here. So this is all filled with thickened epoxy, so there's no voids around there. So now this is a flush surface. So I could go through here.
I don't think I'm there. I see it now.
I'm going to put a little bit because there is a little gap. That's not going to want to take glass. So I'll fill this up, get this all ready for glass. And the most you can remove any excess material, you don't have to sand. I still have to sand here, but if there's big chunks of, epoxy, then you have to sand that smooth to leave a smooth surface for the fiberglass. So all these little pieces that are hanging down, it's easier to go back right now and clean them up so you don't have to sand as much and prep it for the glass.
Good job.
But that came in pretty good. There was a little bit of a gap, but how hard that was to line up and get in there, we expected a little bit, but filling it with thickened epoxy, a little bit in there. All right, so you can see we're finally up on deck, getting the main coosa board that is replacing all that wood. And you can notice there on the bow there, I ended up cutting out the forward section of that fiberglass. The wood underneath there, it still absorbed moisture, and so I went ahead and cut all the way up towards the bow. Removed all that, removed that other thin piece of plywood that was on there. So the key is to just get all the wood out of there, and you won't have any issues there. So we've got a big surface area there. I'm mixing up more epoxy, the 5-to-1 epoxy. I'm going around all the edges and soaking it up on the edges there, getting it in there, and we'll saturate that. And then here in a second, you'll see I'm going to prime that whole surface. That's the original fiberglass that's underneath there. And then I'll also prime the coosa board and let those sit for a second, but all the edges and all the flat surfaces. Next step we'll do B is to use a silica thickener, and I'll mix up some more of the 5:1 epoxy, add the silica thickener in consistency of like Vaseline or peanut butter, something to work with, and I'll spread that around the surface area and notch trowel it, and then I'll set the two larger pieces in there and get them all set, and so they'll be a great foundation. Okay, here's applying the thickened epoxy on there, just using the notch trowel, getting it all in the edges. Just don't want to have any voids in there, so no air voids and pockets, and notch it in there nice and even, and then you'll see I'll set the main pieces of coosa board into place.
To clean up the edges there, so
Yeah, I'm going to put another layer of thickened epoxy all the way in around the edges.
all right. So you push the epoxy in all the cracks.
Yeah, just making sure that there's no gaps, and this will help bond the coosa board to the sides from the fiberglass.
Thank you for joining us as we're continuing working on the motor vessel Cetus. Jim has been very busy on the boat. I'm just doing technical things and being the enforcer with that hammer and mixing epoxy for him. I'll go ahead and show you our current situation, and we will continue with another upload next week of the continuance of working on the bow. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll be making more. This is our current situation on the bow. You can see how pretty that is. That is without the bow pulpit. So Jim's put several coats of paint. We will spin the boat around so the bow will be at the dock. And the ball pulpit will be installed. So Jim's already pre-drilled, and it's great to have wonderful friends on the dock to come assist with helping on the boat.